before anything else, we would like to get their main topic and theme, their thesis statement and rationale on the topic of crafting atmosphere through design integration. And I'd like to start with Rafael Paragas.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone's feeling well this morning. It's quite rainy where I was from. Anyway, speaking of design integration, primarily, personally, and the company Perkins&Will, we see design as problem solving. So, the idea of sustainability, it's something that everyone would always bring up, but how do we actually do it? The way that we would approach it is first looking at who are the stakeholders for these certain hospitality and tourism projects, and then see what their roles would be in terms of conceptualizing, planning everything, creating the entire design, and more importantly, the implementation and the maintenance and operations of these developments. We are guided by what we were calling living design philosophy, which we see as a more beyond sustainable approach for these kinds of developments.
Okay, well, thank you, Rafael. So Perkins&Will is known not just for hospitality and retail mixed use, but also for healthcare. And they have been blending healthcare design into tourism and wellness facilities. So I'd like to hear a little bit from Melanie about her thoughts on crafting atmosphere through design integration. Melanie?
Thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, please also introduce us to what RIOS is all about and everything that it offers from LA and Singapore, now in the Philippines.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for the invitation to speak here. And so a little bit about RIOS first. We are a multidisciplinary practice that's headquartered out of LA, but have offices around the world, specifically local to Southeast Asia and Singapore. So we offer architecture, interior architecture, and master planning and landscape. We like to say that we design everything from cups to cities. And so I think a unique approach from RIOS is that we really dive into a design problem to understand the atmosphere from a local climate. And so really looking at a hyper-local experience that really understands the culture of the area as well as the user group, and then looks at the problem from a really diverse approach, both from the creative minds in our office, but also really bringing in the user groups and various people who are going to be using the facility to understand how we can satisfy their needs to make a really joyful and unique experience that is singular to that location. So thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. And to introduce himself, we have Engineer Felipe Agustin, and his rationale in there for.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is where you want to wake up in the morning and get excited on what you do about buildings and sustainability. So ecoSolutions has been in the Philippines for almost 16 years, and since then we've been assisting the building industry on how to produce a sustainable building. Sustainability is there's a triple bottom line on sustainability. It's economic, social, and economic, social, and environment. Unless those three categories are not satisfied, then you cannot call a project a sustainable project. So on our part as engineers, we assist the architects and the developers to come up with sustainable solutions. And most of these sustainable solutions are now initiatives, or most of the developers like Ayala, that it's part of their corporate social responsibility, satisfy those triple bottom line. So yeah, sustainability is a wholesome approach from concept to the operations.
Thank you, Felipe. Yes. So when you craft atmosphere and ambience, you actually rely on design, but also through the day-to-day operations that hotels and resorts are going through. And you also are facing climate, you're also facing the difficulties and the challenges of the site. You're also looking, say, at logistics. And everyone is moving towards sustainability. What are the directions that Perkins&Will is approaching, Rafael, in regards to sustainability for the designs of hotels and resorts? Any new ideas and innovations?
I think we can go back, at least for much of our experience, we deal, at least for our team, we deal with estates, master planning, urban design of these large-scale developments, and it's largely context-based. We could look at a regional, macro, I mean, we always use the term site analysis, but we could look at infrastructure, whether that's transport, tourism infrastructure, and how it would relate to all these hospitality developments. So if, yes, you can, it's easy to say that you want some kind of development there, but how would it actually work with the larger context? So maybe that's where you could start. And as I mentioned earlier, we always look at the role of all stakeholders, be it the guests, the people who would operate these hotels and hospitality developments. But more importantly, because these hotels are either in urban or rural settings, and there are specific amenities in the area that you want to capitalize on, and it's the locals who would actually have a great idea of how you could do it. So maybe involving them, at least at the earliest stage, even at the planning stage, would actually help making sure the overall sustainability of these developments.
Okay, very nice. Looking always at the context of the location. Rafael, thank you. And before I head over to Melanie, I'd like to toss over this question to Felipe. So, Felipe, engineering is almost always not just overlooked, but not given center stage. Because in most cases, it's the interior design that receives the guest experience points, and the architecture from the pictorial look of it, and the envelope from outside. But within, we're talking about pipes, ducting, and how they really work. And in today's demands for thermal comfort, for sustainability, for low energy consumption, what are the latest ideas, Engineer Felipe Agustin, on engineering for hotels and resorts?
Okay, so gone are the days where the architect will throw the drawings to the engineers, and the engineers will start throwing all those engineering components. During the advent of green buildings and sustainability, as an engineer, I practiced in Australia prior to moving to the Philippines, where I learned the collaboration between the architect and the engineers. So as engineer, we provide technical information to the architects on how the building will perform towards the environment, and also optimizing the occupancy comfort. And there's a balance between the occupancy comfort and energy consumption or use of materials. So we do a lot of analysis on simulation, calculation, and those technical informations that we throw to the architects. So we come up with a green building or sustainable solutions.
Very nice. And there, I hope you picked up the keywords. So simulations that are important when you are doing it in design. So you don't see it as it's happening or as it's being built. A lot of these formulations for solving problems in air conditioning, in electricals, should be done during the design process. And yes,
I add to
Felipe,
that?
sure.
Yeah, so most of the projects that we have completed from overseas and here, when we run a simulation, our accuracy of our simulation, regardless what the weather is, we are in the 5% accuracy. That's my experience.
And that's good. So we're also doing a lot of building information modeling now, energy simulation. We are now looking at different materials. Even the pipes are different now, and how they're able to handle condensation. You know, the usual operations problems of engineering directors in hotels. There is a condensation issue on the aircon, therefore the ceiling needs to be replaced because you have that large map showing on a very nice white ceiling, and then slowly it's dripping on a guest room chair. So some of these are mechanical engineering issues that could be addressed really at the onset in design. And so that's a lot of forward planning. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of emerging design and engineering companies now that we are working with. Back then, so let me reveal a little bit about my age. So, 20 years ago, or let me say more than 12 years ago, working on some of Ayala Land's hotels, we were very limited with the engineering selection that we have. But quite a lot have come back from the States, from Australia, from the Middle East, and from Singapore. So we have a great roster now. And Felipe, we're very glad to have you here, and thank you for your ideas. And we are also so fortunate that someone as stellar as Melanie Freeland, yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can Google her, and their firm is here upstage with us. Because not only do they do architecture and interiors and planning, we have also worked with them on landscape, doing linear parks, working on sustainability, not anymore as a feature, but as a standard. We don't have to announce it because it's already embedded in everything that we do. So Melanie, given that, the work that you do all over the world, tell us more about design, integration, and crafting atmosphere.
Thanks, Cathy, for your kind remarks regarding RIOS. So, I think at RIOS, something that we're really interested in is how we can innovate around sustainability. I think checking the boxes related to LEED or other systems is a fantastic thing, but we're really looking at how we can push the boundaries and think about new systems. And so in-house, we started to use a lot of AI. I know that for some people it's somewhat controversial, but we are really interested in how we can use it to better understand the systems that we have in place, as well as rethink use of materials and where those things should go. So we have a couple people in-house for us that have written several AI scripts. We use that to analyze the site, wind patterns, daylighting, weather patterns, so we can be smarter about the building we're designing. But also, we are really trying to innovate with materials. So thinking about new systems and new materials that can be used in unique places, both where users can interact with them, but also maybe in situations that are behind the scenes, right? And so whether that's an upcycled material, something that has been used in the area and that we're trying to find new ways to implement it, or it's a new material on the market and we want to try and bring it in as an education moment for the whole team to learn about how we can integrate it into the project. And so, I think that we are not scared of innovation. It's something that we find really exciting in the office. And we're constantly bringing in, others in the industry and such as yourself that we can learn and be better. I think that we're not scared of change either. And so we know that this is a conversation that is constantly growing and changing. And so we want to be a part of that conversation.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. That is very nice. I picked up right away what you said about local materials. And you know what? Whenever you look at a hotel and resort and see that there has been a collaboration between a local architect and an international architect, you will also see that there is indeed a fresh pair of eyes that looked at the whole development. It's very nice to see projects where somebody who is not purely Filipino in that sense steps back, takes a look at the site, looks at how this development will form, helps reshape or shape the brand, and then put forth a design that will be so different and unique and new. And that's what we love about collaborations. I always tell my fellow architects that do not be afraid when there are foreign consultants coming into the picture, because not only is it good for you and your team because of that learning and exchange, they learn from us too. But that whole idea of seeing that we could use our materials in a new way, something novel, allows us to offer new guest experiences. both in the lobby and in the restaurant and in the rooms. So before I toss over the question and answer portion to our audience and making sure that our technical team has microphones all around for the Q&A, I do have this one question to our three peers here up on stage. Let me start by answering my own question, okay? What are the new ideas now in hotel design that are realizing new and novel guest experiences? My first answer would be the lobbies are being looked at now. How are you using your lobby? It's not just going to be a corridor or a hallway. There are many ways by which it could be utilized and be refreshed, perhaps not just for meetings and standby area for coffee and drinks, but many other ways. And so let me tickle the audience here by asking our three experts, what are the new ideas now and the new spaces and the new ways of using hotel design approaches? I started with lobbies. Lobbies now are undergoing a transformation. Developers now are looking at, how do I make my lobby more interesting? How is it now more than just a walkway? Felipe?
Yeah.
You can speak on the engineering standpoint too, you know?
Yeah. One of the most challenging projects that an engineer would encounter is hotels and then hospital, because there's a lot of occupancy issues on how we provide a comfort like hospitals. And next to hospitals is on energy consumption are hotels. They use a lot of energy. They use a lot of water resources, and those are the challenging for us as engineers to provide a very nice hotel lobby without seeing those ductworks and pipes and things, you know. So those are the challenging to us as an engineer to give a grant on the interior and architectural design, but the services are not seen.
Thank you, Felipe. Melanie?
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of using typical spaces in unique ways for unique program is something that we're really interested in at RIOS. We started to look at this duality in several of our projects. And so, for instance, in one where you have a pool deck, which is, you know, very typically for lounging by the pool, and maybe there might be some spa spaces or a gym associated, we started to look about how that space could be used in other programming ways. And so if you were to plant a mixology garden, for say, that had herbs and some fruit and some other things, and then you could host classes out there. So other ways of keeping guests on property. We've also really started to look into the rooms and how those could be thought of in unique ways, maybe incorporating onsen pools or sleeping porches, some other things that start to exhibit wellness, which is something that many of our clients are interested in. And so bringing these unique experiences to a property that provides the user something that they're not going to be able to see at any other location. And so that's something that we're really looking into.
Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Yes, indeed. Something that has not been seen in another location, that uniqueness. And that's also what keeps your customers coming back, because they know that there is always a surprise or a sense of comfort at the end of every stay or during their stay. So for your questions, please join us at slido.com. You can also scan the QR code and be able to text in your questions. But if there are those of you who still want a microphone, you can come up here in the middle of center stage, and I'll hand over the microphone for you so that you can ask a question. Okay? And in the meantime, any interesting component of a hotel now that is offering something new?
Yeah, I hear what Cathy mentioned about lobbies, because it's about arrival and approach, the experience, that atmosphere that we're developing. And from there, I would like to take a step back and maybe look at it at the site planning lens and look at the approach and the arrival, even from outside of the hotel, going to it, the entire travel, the approach, from with the way that you would traverse, say, the road going to it, the view of you looking maybe perhaps to maybe if it's overlooking a lake, a mountain, or how you would see the hotel up at the peak of the mountain. And maybe as Melanie talked about materials earlier, I do understand that maybe it's more of an interior context, but even for site materials. So I remember we had this certain project wherein just the mere material of the paving. So maybe you could start with, because it's more in a rather rural area, so maybe the road would start with like concrete or asphalt paving, and then slowly you wouldn't realize it, but you would hear it, that it would transition to pebble rocks or maybe some gravel, and the mere sound and experience of your car driving through that kind of material would already create that sense of, oh, this is a different place. I am now entering my hotel. I can start now my vacation, my leisure experience.
That's very nice, Rafael. Yes. So it's all about sensory experiences and delights. So there's a different material now, it's a different sound. And in most hotels and resorts, a different smell, aroma, that fragrance is already welcoming you to your vacation or to your business conference. So we now have a couple of questions on slido.com. And the first one I would like to direct to Engineer Felipe is, are there local materials available in the Philippines that would provide a sustainable solution in terms of energy consumption?
Oh, yes.
I love that confidence.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Okay, Felipe.
Well, comparing from like 10 years ago, one of my challenges is to find those materials or technology or building elements that we need to use for a sustainable building. But there's been a changing of landscape on those materials for the past 5 years. And technology and materials are now readily available in the Philippines. And us ecoSolutions, we are also thinking of adopting the AI solutions for our projects.
Thank you, Felipe. And the next question on Slido is for Melanie. What is your take on lighting, both for natural and day lighting benefits on your design? How are you using this, considering the challenges that lots of daylight can also do? Some hotel rooms would just basically want to be shuttered off. Some people have time zone and jet lag issues. And how would you manage that in preserving the atmosphere?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that, as we all know, access to daylight is such an important component for wellness. And so we are often looking at daylight and how we can control it better within the room, as well as make sure that users have access to all the controls so that they're able to customize as needed. But I think regarding daylight, the really important understanding is diffuse lighting, right? And so if you do have a large opening or a window that you're able to create a unique shade canopy, or maybe you're using vegetation to help diffuse the light. And if you have a skylight, that you're bending the light in some ways, so not to create glare. And so we're often studying light in rooms, in lobbies, right, to understand really how it's affecting the space and how it's affecting the users. But we understand that it's so critical for wellness. And so we want to make sure that we're doing it in a very smart way. And often we will use a lighting along with natural lighting to really complement so that it feels like it's a very smooth cohesion throughout the day, so you don't get this very, very harsh contrast. You know, when you turn on the lights in the morning in your hotel room, as I did this morning, and it was very, very bright, right? You kind of want a very subtle wake up. And so we're starting to look at those things and how we can integrate natural daylighting into that, so it's a much more softer and enjoyable experience overall.
Thank you, Melanie. Very nice. And rightly so, the next question is for Rafael. Given the focus of Perkins&Will on net zero energy. So in terms of sustainability, what can be our focus area in building facilities to achieve net zero or greatly reduce carbon emissions?
Yeah, I think what we can also look at is, before we look at the details of the building, we can see it from a site planning lens as well. The orientation of the building, how it would be, for the overall massing and form of it. Because Melanie was talking about using AI for site and like sand patterns and wind patterns. So that would largely impact your carbon emissions. All of these energy being used to maintain and operate the building, a significant portion of it could actually be managed at the planning stage of the building, where it would be located with respect to the site, in terms of angles of the sun. There's so much technicality regarding that aspect. Another thing, again, with materials also, and the overall building articulation at the exterior itself, how it would absorb like the heat of the sun, especially throughout several times a day and throughout the year. It would definitely, it's a good starting point at looking at how you would reduce carbon emissions and thereby creating a sustainable building and a larger sustainable tourism development or hotel development.
Thank you, Rafael. And for you, Melanie, what are the new value propositions coming into play for design developments?
I mean, I think we're really trying to understand sustainable solutions and design in a smart and sensible way. And so we're often working with developers and user groups really early on to understand if we're bringing an innovative solution to the table, how that's affecting overall cost of the project, and making sure that that's being done in a very smart and strategic way, right? So that we're not bending the budget for innovation that's going to be at the detriment to the entire project.
And I think the next two questions are also relevant for you, Melanie. How do you see co-working or work share spaces being embedded in resorts and hotels now?
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation, particularly in our office. You know, the workday is really stretched to be a 24-hour day, as much as all of us wish that it weren't. And so we're trying to come up with solutions for co-working that feel like it's a more natural environment and can be a break rather than something that you sort of had to put your heads down and work. And so integrating those in a way that understanding you don't always have to be working at a desk, right? That you could be working in a lounge chair or be taking calls and on your headphones. And so trying to think of innovative solutions both ergonomically as well as how they are at play in the atmosphere so that it doesn't have to feel like you're on call 24/7, which I know that we all don't want to be doing.
That's true. And in relation to your work, also doing interiors and landscape, in terms of materiality, there's a question here from someone in the audience about using Philippine hand-blown glass and crystal features in design. How do you feel about that?
I think that's phenomenal. You know, I think where we work a lot, I was looking at the ceiling actually here at this amazing glass light fixtures. And, you know, I think we're often really trying to meet and understand who is on the ground local that can really help a project feel unique, as I mentioned earlier. And so if there's someone that you want to bring to the table to help us shape a space or, you know, a light fixture or table goods or anything, you know, as I mentioned before, we're really invested in a project from the most minuscule detail up into large scale. You know, I loved the idea of the sensory as you're driving down a road. And so these little unique moments really create something special. So the hand-blown glass could really be phenomenal, obviously, used in a variety of ways.
Yes, there are available in the Philippines. And next question is for Felipe. With regard to sustainability, currently the most common notion is to install solar panels. And our hotels and resorts are also doing that right now. How are you considering this in your design, connecting also to the main power grid? And at the same time, are there other solutions aside from solar for cost efficiency and energy savings?
Oh, yes. I would I would recommend, if I were to design a building, I would recommend to use a solar. That will address the issues of zero carbon emission, because then you are using a green energy where you don't burn a fossil fuel that results to a carbon dioxide emission. Philippines is predominantly, we have a very nice sandcast. The sandcast intensity in the Philippines it's actually, based on our model and based on our analysis, is actually on a above average. So you can actually, well, let's put it this way. A solar system could give you a return of investment for a year, depending on the scale of your project. So if especially for hotels where you're using a 24/7 operation, and you can use your solar without even using a battery. It's direct to your system.
Right. So what
yeah.
you're saying, Engineer Felipe, is that the sun cast here in the Philippines is so good that we really should harness solar power, because in some other countries it's not, and they cannot do a lot of solar because the sun cast, or what you call the level by which the direction and angle of the sun impedes or is into the site is very low. Here in the Philippines, it's pretty high in most parts of the country.
If I have my data right, I think it's about 80% of the whole year.
80% of the whole year, even in typhoon season?
Well,
Yes.
I mean, that's like, what, 2 or 3 months?
Well, that is true, yes.
That's 8% of
And
your
that's a
1
time
year.
when you use the solar power that is stored in your batteries. Just like last week, it was so crazy, Melanie, here in the Philippines, and now it's sunny. And I'm so happy to be going to Pangalucian of Ayala Land El Nido Resorts for this weekend.
And
So,
also, the solar panels now are more efficient compared to 5 years ago.
and if I may say so, also less expensive. Before, it was such an exorbitant cost. So I like what Engineer Felipe said. In 1 year, you can do ROI, especially if your hotel operations is big. So you could recoup your investment on solar panels. And there are so many technologies and suppliers available now. Of course, still be careful. Just as you are careful with paint, some of it is just coagulated water. So it's the same thing with solar. Be careful with the suppliers you choose. Ask the experts. And my next question is for Rafael. Integrating cultural heritage and vestiges of history in hotels is always a nice touch. What are the new ways by which culture and heritage are now being embedded in hotel design? I rephrase that for you.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we talk about culture, or let me start with this. Hospitality design is experiential design, and what is the best story that you can make that's something that's actually locally made, and there's nothing like that but the local culture. So yes, it is very much important, and I think everyone here would agree that it's actually your key driver for creating that narrative, for creating that leisure experience in the area. It's largely based not only on the social aspect of the communities there, but also on the natural features of the development. I remember personally had a project here in the Philippines, Wawa Ecotourism Project. The locals here would probably know Wawa. So it's near the Sierra Madre mountain ranges. There's several falls, hike trails, and it's also home to several indigenous communities. Part of our project is actually working, or at least enabling the client to work with the indigenous community and how they could share their story. We created an area, their own settlement, wherein they have access to all kinds of infrastructure, be it physical or social. But at the same time, we also provide a different space for them to share their story. They have medicinal plants, they have their traditional practices that they want to pass on to future generations and even share it with people outside of their community. And that also creates that entire experience in the development, which the recent areas like, say, the resorts in the area could actually work with the locals to share that story.
That's very nice. So here, a concept and a place that hasn't really been used so much in hotel and resort design, the Sierra Madre Mountains. Very interesting. And I look forward to seeing that project of yours, Rafael. Okay, last two questions. And, I am trying to catch up so that our next panels will also be running on time. But I am so grateful together with the organizers for your level of interest. And I am now busy combining questions, like 3 into 1. So, let me toss this over to you, Engineer Felipe, about charging stations for e-vehicles, considering the new Evida law being considered. And how do you see that for hotels and resorts in sustainability? And also in relation to that, for solar panels, how do we combine that design into the property? We can solve that. We architects can, together with the engineers, can figure that out for you so it doesn't look ugly. And also, how do we, but this is a very important question from the audience, how do you properly dispose of broken solar panels?
Oh,
And what about the charging stations for e-vehicles? Are these now being considered in hotel and resort design with the Evida law? Yes, please.
yeah, it's nice to have this kind of conference because it's actually a collaborative effort from the government and private. I think seeing those e-charging stations are increasing from every towns, and I think we have to encourage also the private sector and the government to produce a passive energy stations like solar farms, like they've done in Dubai, and I think it's an effort between the private sector and the government sector to enhance this initiative.
Very good. In other words, it's already out there, the Evida law. So don't be late in catching the van and be on the bandwagon. Join the rest of us in using solar energy and other implements for reducing carbon footprint and coming up with better energy usage in your developments. And in the next question, I would actually like to summarize them in just a few words for each, no long sentences, please. So, and I will begin by giving two. Can you please give some innovative design strategies hotels can implement in reducing carbon footprint and pushing forth sustainability? So let me start with, my answers would be the use of low emissivity glass and really proper, well-filtered rainwater harvesting. What are your answers, Rafael? And then I go next to Melanie and then Felipe. Just two. Innovative solutions, no long sentences.
That's quite hard. I'm trying to figure out. Maybe just looking at sun shading devices.
Sun shading devices, okay, that's one.
Oh, another one.
Yes, two.
I'll just go back to my earlier answer about building siting and orientation.
Orientation, yes. Orientation plays such a big role. Whenever we show clients solar path and wind flow, there is a reason for that. Breezes do not just happen in your lobby. It all depends also on how you orient your lobby, how the trees are located within and around and surrounding it, and how you also do your walls to be able to create what is called an eddy, EDDY, where you're creating the movement of air within a space without artificial ventilation. And so when you do that with proper ventilation and also the happenstance of light into your building, that's why it's important to orient a building according to the solar path. Thank you for that, Rafael. 2 insights for saving energy. Melanie, please.
Yeah, so I think the number one for us is smart systems. So
Very good.
integrating window shades and HVAC and all of those things to a smart system that calibrates to time of day and sun. Raphael took one of mine. And so I think the other one is really looking at inner operations, right? And how you can also fine tune those, whether it's your linen washing, or these sorts of things that take up a lot of energy, and so reducing energy use overall across the property.
There are so many smart systems now, and interesting, there are those that cater particularly to the hotel and resort sector. Felipe.
I have 3.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, so
No long explanations, though.
First one is building envelope.
Okay.
The energy constitutes on building envelope. It's a lot of energy.
And the absorption.
Yeah.
Yes.
Number 2 is smart buildings.
Very similar to Melanie's smart systems.
Yeah,
Yes.
try to use BMS. I encourage BMS.
Building management systems. Yes. And there are many available in the market now.
Number 3 is you can call ecoSolutions for your project.
That's very, very good. Well, you can always call any one of our esteemed panelists here. Well, thank you very, very much. I'd like to invite the 3 of you to stand up here.